Good morning, all of you. Welcome to English class, and today we will read chapter number 15. That's a poem, Two's Company, written by Dr. Raymond Wilson. This poem satirizes who are sure that there are no such things such as ghosts, and the humor comes from the contrast between what he says at the beginning and what he says and does later. So let's read the poem now. They said the house was haunted, but he laughed at them and said, "Tut tut, I have never heard such tittle tattle as ghosts that groan and chains that rattle. And just to prove that I'm in the right, please leave me here to spend the night." They winked absurdly, trying to smother the ignorant laughter, nudged each other. So, the writer, who is the hero of the poem, has heard about the haunted house but doesn't believe in all these senseless talks. He gives expressions of no care, such as tut tut, and tells his friend that he wants to spend the night in this house, just to prove his friend thus there are no such things such as ghost. And he also doesn't believe in all those senseless talk as the groaning of the ghost, crying of the ghost in pain, and rattling sound of the chains made by the ghost, just to prove that they are there, right there in front of all of them. So he wants to spend the night alone in that haunted house. Then, and left him just as dusk was falling, with hunchback moon and a screech owls calling. No, not that this troubled him one bit, and in fact he was quite glad of it. Then he was left alone in that haunted house, and his friends leaves him alone there, but he is not afraid a single bit. In fact, he was quite happy of staying alone in that house, knowing it's every sane man's mission to contradict all superstitions, because he tries to convince himself that he is a very sensible person, and every sensible person is a duty to just not to believe in all those superstitions. But what is that? Outside it seemed as if chains rattled, someone screamed. But as he was trying to convince himself, as he doesn't believe on all these things and doesn't scared of all these things and ghost, and suddenly he heard some strange noise, such as rattling sound of the chains, screeching of the owls. He gets nervous, and there are many instances of his which shows that night falls. As the night falls, he gets more and more frightened. Then what happens? Come, come, is merrily nervous. He's certain, but just the same. He draws the curtain. He stroke of 12, but there's no clock. He shuts the door and turns the lock. Of course, he knows that no one's there, but no harm comes by taking care. Someone outside, the silly joker, he may as well pick up the poker. That noise again. He checks the door, shutters the window, makes a pause to seek the safest place to hide. Then the brave boy tried to calm himself after hearing a lot of scary noises, screeching of the owl, sound of rattling chains. He gets nervous, little bit nervous, but tries to calm himself down by telling to himself that the sound of whatever he had heard were not really. They were not real, but just feelings. He believed that he was becoming nervous. He was also believing that now he was becoming nervous. So He tries to seek the safest place to hide himself. He is so much frightened now, so he tries to hide himself. Then he finds a cupboard and he finds himself inside a cupboard. Know that there's nothing, anything to fear. He tells himself, when at his ear a voice breathes softly. How do you do? I'm the ghost. Pray, who are you? Then, even then, he tells himself that there is nothing to fear. But to his great shock, the ghost, who was also living inside the cupboard, speaks softly, politely in his ear and introducing itself. The ghost, polite tone. He asks himself, then who's that? Yes, of course, it was a ghost. And it was introducing himself and trying to ask him, how are you? How do you do? And this is the ghost polite tone evokes the humor of this poem. And this certainly contributes to the humor, as normally we do not expect such politeness from a ghost. So this was the poem Two's Company, and that's all for today. Thank you.